I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, an armed civilian thwarts a Palestinian terror attack. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu sets off a bit of a commotion ahead of Israel's birthday celebration. And an Israeli nonprofit has just received a major award from the UN for saving thousands of lives. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Breaking news just now outside the Jewish Ma'ale Adumim settlement in the West Bank. A Palestinian man has been shot after allegedly attempting to stab an Israeli man with a screwdriver in a gas station. The suspect is currently in critical condition in the hospital, and no Israelis have been reported injured. At this time, police say an armed Israeli civilian opened fire on the Palestinian after the suspect rushed at an Israeli armed with a screwdriver. If that's the case, it means a would-be terror attack has just been thwarted, and just in time. The suspected attacker is said to be roughly 21 years old, and the alleged attack took place in a gas station in an industrial zone used by the settlement for factory work. It employs many Palestinians who make double or triple wages compared to normal working fees in the West Bank, but one such factory has, however, faced controversy for allegedly exploiting Palestinian workers in the past. Either way, this gas station is a spot well known to both Israelis and Palestinians who pass through the area, which is only a 10 minutes drive from the gates of Jerusalem. Well, renewed clashes between Israeli troops and Palestinians have erupted along the Gaza border this weekend. Hamas claims the skirmishes merely represent the second planned weekend of a peaceful sit-in, but tens of thousands of Palestinians have attempted to breach the security fence, burning tires, hurling Molotov cocktails, and even waving Nazi symbols at the scene. Israeli security has responded with force.
Mahmoud al-Zahar, the co-founder of Hamas, said that Jews are wild dogs and wild beasts headed for annihilation. Okay? Yahya Sinwar just encouraged Palestinians to eat the livers of Israelis. This is not the rhetoric of an organization that seeks peace.
At this time, 9 Palestinians have been confirmed dead in these clashes from Israeli gunfire. Similar to the outcry last week, the international community has largely slammed Israel for allegedly using excessive and unwarranted lethal force to contain the protest. Israeli leaders tell a very different story and say that the IDF thwarted nothing less than Hamas's attempt to crush the Jewish state. Indeed, footage captured at the scene shows many of the demonstrators immediately turning violent, though somewhat scaled down compared to last weekend. One outlier in these latest clashes, however, is the death of a Palestinian journalist at the scene. Yasser Murtaja was killed by an Israeli bullet while covering the protest roughly 100 meters from the border fence.
كنا متواجدين أنا كنت جنبه في الحدث فالاستهداف كان واضح جدا جدا للصحفيين يعني حتى لدرجة إنه استهدفوا بعضنا اثنين والاستهداف كان بشكل مباشر عن طريق القنص أو عن طريق قنابل الغاز.
Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman says that I don't know who is or who isn't a photographer. Anyone who operates drones above IDF soldiers needs to understand he's putting himself in danger. Human rights groups and journalists worldwide say the fact that Murtaja was wearing a vest with the word press clearly visible means that this was no accident.
We condemn in the strongest terms the killing and injuring of Palestinians protesting for their inalienable rights by Israeli forces. Once again, we echo the call of the Secretary General for the need of an independent and transparent investigation into these incidents. We also reaffirm the importance of providing international protection for Palestinians.
The United States has, for the second time, vetoed a UN resolution ordering an investigation into Israel's use of lethal force in these clashes. The Palestinian Authority says America's veto power holds the UN hostage and will seek to block future U.S. vetoes on the matter. Following last week's shocking reversal on the fate of Israel's asylum seekers from Africa, the government now plans to resume deportations to another unnamed country in Africa. Apparently, the state is already in deep negotiations with such a country to accept deportees, even those deported against their will. And ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with more on this. And Brett, where do things stand now with these deportations?
Well, I got to say, the impression everyone's getting from this, especially after Netanyahu's sudden U-turn last week, is that the government really is rushing for some quick answers here, which I got to say, that's not going to work on a complicated issue like this, especially one as personal as this one has become. Case in point, the Israeli government now says that it has already dispatched an envoy to this unnamed African country, widely believed to be Uganda at this point, to secure it for those deportations. But hours after that was said to be practically a done deal, Uganda has officially denied anything was ever in the works. So it's kind of hard to know where anything stands at all in this matter.
Well, I think you're not alone in saying that. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms the government has faced on this issue is that the whole thing seemed rushed and sometimes less than transparent. Sure. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions that the public, including these nearly 40,000 asylum seekers, simply doesn't know, which is at least one reason why the Israeli courts have largely blocked these deportations as unconstitutional up until this point.
Sure, and that's exactly why so many breathed such a sigh of relief when Netanyahu announced last week's deal, because that deal was not only seen as kind of the humanitarian thing to do for a population widely received as legal refugees, it was also a very concrete solution, one that saw half the asylum seekers safely resettled to the West and gave the other half refugee asylum in Israel, along with the plan to disperse them throughout the country. It was a compromise for both sides, and bottom line, it was just clear.
Now, let's talk about that deal, because you're right, a lot of people saw it as a big win-win for everyone, which is why even today, top Jewish groups all over the world are still urging Netanyahu to come back to it. Netanyahu's coalition, however, says they saw it as a sign of weakness and not a good compromise, and they may have even turned against the prime minister in order to make him renege on it. I mean, let's not forget, Netanyahu canceled that deal less than 24 hours after proudly announcing it as the best possible one on TV.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen an issue quite like this, I gotta say. And for better or for worse, I think that this could be one of those moments that goes on to really define this country. Because on one hand, even Israelis who do support the deportations, and nearly 2/3 of them do, they say that Netanyahu did botch this deal with the UN. On the other hand, if they can't legally deport asylum seekers against their will, the state says their next course of action is going to be to write a law that bypasses the judicial system altogether and block the courts from ruling on anything at all, which I think a lot of people see as a step maybe away from democracy.
For now, the government still has nearly 200 African asylum seekers in jail awaiting deportation. The state released a small group a few days ago after Rwanda backed out of a secret deal with Israel to accept deportees. But unless Uganda does so as well, the fate of this larger group remains in limbo. All right, thanks for joining us, Britt.
Of course.
U.S. President Trump has just announced his intentions to pull U.S. troops out of Syria within the next 6 months. And now a video of victims of an apparent Syrian chemical attack has gone viral. With Turkey, Russia, and Iran all working together with the Assad regime, many are now wondering what the response would and should be. And more importantly, whether or not Russia and Iran are complicit in these attacks. Joining us now is Dr. Nir Boms, the research fellow at the Moshe Dayan Center of Tel Aviv University. Thank you for joining us. So how many chemical attacks have occurred in Syria? Can you break that down for us?
It's actually difficult to count. This year, I have seen reports of over 7 different chemical attacks, and we have seen a good number of these reports since the beginning, and certainly since the very big one in August of 2013, where over 1,500 people were killed.
Now, Russia is the main background supplier of the Assad regime, so is Russia at fault here? What would you say?
Well, President Trump just gave a statement where he accused Russians and Iranians being the backers of the Assad regime, and in many ways they're responsible and accountable for what the military is doing, because they are the ones who are controlling big parts of this military. They're the ones who are supplying this military, and they're the one who's supposed to know what this military is doing and responsible for its conduct. So accusing Russia is not completely out of the cards. Although it seems that this has been an another action of the of the Syrian army. And this is something that first and foremost the Syrian army will have to be liable to.
Well, let's also talk about the appearance of these chemical weapons in the first place and how the government was able to get their hands on this. What is the explanation there?
Well, they were using barrel bombs, and these barrel bomb techniques is something that they have been using against, just to stress, against civilian populations. There are over 5,000 people who were reported, dead from this latest wave in Ruta, which is where Duma is a part of this Eastern Ruta area, and this is the last bastions of Jaish al-Islam, the rebels who have been fighting the Syrian regime. Of course, the Syrians wanted to clear all these rebels, and for them, anyone who would join them, whether they're civilian or not, they're all rebels, and they're liable for attacks, and they would use these barrel bombs. And it seems that in some cases, because this is what had happened in the past, these bombs were also enriched by other components and some chemical components to make them perhaps appear or to make them more efficient. And in the latest case, yesterday, a helicopter seems to have been carrying from the Damir base a barrel bomb with chemical weapon, with sarin, that was the main instigator of this particular attack.
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the international community responds to this, and also specifically Israel. Is Israel going to do anything? Do you think we're going to see any type of response from Israel?
The international community will debate. It's a Sunday. We've only begun to hear the responses, and we've heard, by the way, a number of responses just in the last few weeks saying that if we'll see another attack, we will respond. The other piece is just the piece that you've mentioned, the U.S.-Russian dynamic. If the U.S. needs to make a statement, then perhaps it will feel compelled to respond. First, because it said it will. That's a red line. And President Trump was speaking about the red line in the scent of President Obama. He was the one who responded to another chemical attack last year by bombing the airport and a number of other installations from which these weapons and helicopters had departed from. So there is a chance that the U.S. will respond. As for Israel, Israel is not going to respond to this attack. But Israel is now looking at the fact that a number of forces, a number of Syrian forces are approaching the south. A lot of the forces that have been involved in the Ghouta attack, 40% of the Syrian military has been involved there. It received orders to basically march down south, march to Dara, and then to the Israeli border. This puts Israel in a very significant dilemma.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think just seeing this video was so shocking, and Israel has been obviously helping a lot of Syrian refugees on the border, so it's going to be interesting to see if Israel is going to be involved any further with providing medical attention to it. That's for our next interview, because unfortunately we've run out of time. Thank you for joining us. All right, a minor crisis is brewing behind closed doors in the Knesset, and it's not over any upcoming votes or controversial legislation. Instead, it's over the upcoming ceremonies for Israel's 70th birthday next week. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with the story. So, Aaron, what is the issue?
Well, traditionally, the torch lighting event that kicks off the celebration of Israel's anniversary of independence is an apolitical, non-political event. So typically, historically, neither president nor prime minister have ever attended. Netanyahu intends both to break tradition by attending and by lighting the torch and possibly speaking.
Well, I understand that this is a move that has actually outraged members of his own government, interestingly.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that it's angered people in the opposition just a little bit more, though. I mean, you know, they're accusing him of using this loophole to invite himself by inviting Honduras first, for example.
Okay, so what is the opposition doing about this?
Well, first of all, they're again accusing Honduras of having this bloody history, which should exclude them from the event in the first place, which would actually take care of that loophole. But also they're saying, you know, by law, if the prime minister is there at an apolitical event, then the opposition leader should be there as well to represent the whole public.
All right, so then we can expect Isaac Herzog to show up as well, is what you're saying?
I don't know if he's confirmed yet or not, but yeah, if Netanyahu will be there, then we can assume that he'll be there as well.
Interesting. Now, finally, Aaron, several Knesset members have also voiced plans to boycott the event if Netanyahu attends. Is that actually, is there a chance that that could actually happen?
There is a chance of that happening, and in fact, even a former Shin Bet head, Carmi Galon, came out and said, you know, hey, if you're thinking of protesting or boycotting, just turn off the TV when Netanyahu appears.
Well, this seems a little intense, to say the least. All right, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The details on this. All right, sad, crushing news, sports fans. Israel's beloved pro baller Omri Caspi has just been officially booted from the NBA's Golden State Warriors. This comes less than 1 week before the NBA playoffs kick off, which adds insult to the injury because this would have been the first time any Israeli player had ever played in a playoff game. Caspi has been battling an ankle injury for a while now, and speculation has been high that the owners would give him the axe. The Golden State Warriors have been crowned the NBA champions for 3 years in a row now. Obviously, that means they take the game very seriously, and Caspi's cut was most likely strictly business. Word is that this makes way for Quinn Cook to move up the bench and take over Caspi's spot in the playoffs. Caspi will be for sure a hot commodity once the season ends, but his recurring ankle injury could continue to be a problem. No matter what, though, Caspi will always have a spot in Israeli history books. In 2009, he became the first ever Israeli player to make it to the NBA. He played 53 games as a Golden State Warrior this season, including 7 starts. And needless to say, he's quite the role model for literally any or an entire country of up-and-coming athletes. All right, today is Orthodox Easter, one of the holiest days of the year for Orthodox Christians all over the world. Tens of thousands of pilgrims have just gathered in Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre to fulfill a sacred ritual that's over 1,000 years old. Orthodox Christians base their Easter holiday on the Julian calendar, different from the Gregorian calendar used by most countries in the West. But make no mistake, Orthodox Easter is just as holy to the millions of Orthodox Christians worldwide who celebrate the holiday every year. This year's pilgrimage to Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre, built upon the site where Christians believe Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected, is a tradition 1,200 years in the making. Either crammed inside the church or waiting outside in the streets, thousands of Christians pass the holy fire from candle to candle, representing the resurrection of their Lord and Savior. These candles will be taken back to their respective churches all over the world. The holy flame itself is believed to originate from somewhere in the edicule, the small chamber where Jesus' tomb is believed to be. Top clerics from the Eastern Orthodox Church enter the edicule and emerge with the flame. Its symbolism made all the more incredible by its mysterious origin. Not so long ago, your phone was just used to make calls, and if you wanted a calculator or a calendar or anything else, you'd have to go elsewhere. I know what you're thinking. Thank heavens for the modern-day app. Well, joining us now in the studio is Robert Prishku, the CRO of Zemingo, an Israeli company that has a platform to keep us more connected than ever. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so tell me about Copilot. This is your new platform, right? What does it do?
Yeah, well, Copilot is a IoT platform. It's a consumer IoT platform that is built for small to medium scale customers that enables them basically to engage with their users and monetize on their user base.
Interesting. So how did you go about developing this platform? What inspired it?
Okay, that's a good question. Well, Zemingo is one of the veterans in the world of custom app development.
Yeah.
And in the last 2 to 3 years, we've been focusing on developing what we called apps of things, or applications for connected devices. So we accumulated a lot of knowledge, and we found there's an opportunity in the market. Because although the IoT market is a very huge one, there isn't a platform that is made for small-time players. Small companies, the problem with them is that usually they lack the resources, the technology, the time, and so on, to take advantage of the offering of the bigger companies like Google and Amazon.
Yeah.
So basically they end up developing, tailoring together those small bits and bytes to try to build their own platform. So what the offering of the Copilot is basically, we call it all you need and only what you need in order to run a great connected product.
Very cool. All right, so is Copilot already available, or when will it be available?
Yeah, well, it's already available.
Okay.
We have already a few customers that are on board. Although we only launched it officially last week, it's already, thank you, it's already in the market. We have already 2 players that are using it and are going to implement them. Yeah, so it's already available.
Very excited. Again, like I said, congratulations, and it'll be interesting to see where you guys go with this platform. Already it's having an impact, clearly. All right. Fashion will take on a whole new meaning for you once you hear about this. An Israeli fashion business called Kite Pride is supporting victims of sex trafficking by employing and preparing them to re-enter the workforce. These survivors are creating fashionable products made out of a very unique material. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here with more. Hi, Emmanuel.
Hi. Thanks, Natasha. Well, like you said, the Kite Pride project takes old or unusable kite surfing kites and transforms them into unique, one-of-a-kind, fashionable, bags, all different types, like computer bags, stuff like that. 90% of the workers that do work at the Kite Pride project have been either trafficked or employed as sex workers. And actually, I got to interview the founder of it on my show on Israel in Style, so why don't we take a look really quick?
Let's take a look.
This designer, Rebecca is her name, she heard about us and she heard that we wanted to start to create jobs for people in need, people exiting the commercial sexual industry.
Right.
We wanted to create jobs for people who didn't find any. And at the same time, she was like, why don't you, the whole idea of old and broken becoming new and beautiful is like the people,
right.
Old and broken. I mean, not all of them are old, but just their old life,
Definitely.
leaving it behind them, broken, and making them beautiful again and giving them a second chance in life.
Well, I mean, this is a really unique idea.
100%.
Where did the founders come up with this?
Well, the Obligers, they're a couple that they relocated from Switzerland to Tel Aviv in 2014 with the mission to have an impact, to make a difference in the trafficking industry here in Israel. Nearly 12,000 men, women, and children are identified as sex workers here in the Holy Land. So they were just coming here to kind of make a little bit of a difference and put a little fashion twist on it. They didn't expect for this to happen until the designer reached out to them and, you know, kind of gave them the initiative to really create the fashion aspect of it.
Well, I mean, I think this is also an issue that is not spoken about as much as it needs to be spoken about. You know, every 30 seconds, somebody becomes a victim of human trafficking, and almost every country in the world is involved, whether it's a point of origin, transit, or destination for victims like these. It's really special that Kite Pride is focusing on this population. So how does it work? I mean, where are they getting these old kites from, especially? I can't even imagine.
So there's a lot of people, you know, that either donate them, they collect them. There's actually an Israeli kite brand that's called Blade that also donates. Like, you can't use these kite surfs anymore. You know what I mean? These kites are unusable to be, you know, like kite surfed. Exactly. So they take it in to be used, and so they take them and they reuse them. They clean them. They sew them. They make different types of designs for people to purchase them. The costs are between $29 to $119, depending on the sizes.
There's a range.
Definitely, there's a range of different, you know, sizes. They have lunch boxes, backpacks, all different kinds of things.
And I bet this is a really durable material also as well. I mean, because it is not easy to kite surf.
It is not easy to kite surf.
I can't even imagine how durable these products might be. I mean, you could probably take this to the beach, right, and not worry about.
That's how they got started with it. They saw that a lot of people were just carrying in IKEA bags their kites. And so they were like, okay, well, why don't we use old kites to create bags so that they can take them to the beach?
Yeah, well, it's definitely waterproof. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us, Emmanuel. And obviously, this is a great cause for those of you who are interested in buying a bag. Check out this project, Kite Pride.
Yes.
All right, guys. Now, here is a disturbing fact. 1 in every 100 children born around the world suffers from congenital heart disease. But here's the good news. The Israeli nonprofit Save a Child's Heart is on a mission to save these children. And they've just won a major award from the United Nations for saving the lives of more than 4,400 children across the planet. Most developing countries have few, if any, trained pediatric cardiac surgeons, and they're seriously needed to perform life-saving operations. Since 1995, the Israeli NGO Save a Child's Heart has been working to improve the quality of cardiac care for children in these countries. And to date, SAC has helped thousands of kids in 58 different countries throughout Africa, South America, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. SAC flies sick children to Israel's Wolfson Medical Center free of charge and covers all medical, travel, and accommodation costs, even if a child requires a lifetime of cardiac care. Plus, the organization also trains medical professionals around the world and establishes medical centers of competence in developing nations. The United Nations has just honored SAC with the 2018 UN Population Award, which recognizes outstanding achievements in population and health. But SAC doesn't need any award to continue doing its life-saving work. The organization has just accepted its first child from Fiji, just in time for Israel's 70th Independence Day. Here comes our Hebrew word of the day. Sorry guys, looks like Israel's favorite NBA player Omri Caspi won't be balling it up in the playoffs this year, and that's why today's word is mevaes, which means bummed, because that's how we're all feeling. All right, ize mevaes, what a bummer. That's probably what Caspi was saying when he heard the news that he'd just gotten the axe. That headline certainly mevaes oti, or bums me out too, and I'm not even a big basketball fan, so just imagine how mevoasim, or bummed, all of Israel's actual NBA fans must be. But hey, all's fair in love and b-ball. Some days you're feeling up, and some days you're feeling just plain mevaes. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy but pleasant with a low of 57 or 14 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a slight drop in temperatures and a possible morning shower with a high of 69 or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.53 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.